Level 1. The Surface Support Diver. You show up at the dock at 5 a.m., wearing jeans and work boots that smell like diesel. The boat is already running. The crew is loading equipment you don't understand yet. Hoses, umbilicals, gas panels, communication boxes, tools with names you've never heard. Someone hands you a clipboard and tells you to check the manifold pressures. You nod like you know what that means. You don't know what that means. You will spend the next 6 months pretending to understand things until you actually understand them. That is the entire job. You are the lowest person in the diving hierarchy. You are not a welder. You are not even a diver yet. You are the person who makes sure divers don't die while they work underwater. You tend their umbilical, the bundle of hoses that supplies air, communication, and hot water. You monitor gauges that track depth, gas mixtures, and decompression schedules. You write everything down in a logbook with handwriting that gets messier as the shift drags past 12 hours. The diver is 80 feet down in zero visibility water cutting through a pipeline. You are on deck watching a depth gauge and listening to his breathing through a headset. He asks for more slack on the umbilical. You feed it out slowly, making sure it doesn't snag on anything. One mistake and you could trap him down there or cut his air supply. You've been doing this for 3 weeks and the weight of that responsibility hasn't gotten lighter. The weather doesn't care about your comfort. You work in the Gulf of Mexico in August when the humidity makes your shirt stick to your back before breakfast. You work in the North Sea in January when the wind cuts through 4 layers of clothing like they're not even there. The boat pitches in swells that turn your stomach inside out. You throw up over the rail and get back to work because nobody's going to do your job for you. The pay is better than anything you could find on land. You make $200 a day as a tender, sometimes more if the project runs long. But you're gone for weeks at a time. 21 days on, 7 days off, sometimes 28 and 7. You miss birthdays and holidays and every normal thing people do when they're not living on a boat surrounded by machinery and ocean. Your friends from high school are getting married and buying houses. You're learning to read dive tables and memorizing emergency procedures for arterial gas embolism. The divers treat you like you're invisible until you make a mistake. Then they notice you immediately and loudly. You hand a diver the wrong tool through the stage. He surfaces and explains in detail why you're an idiot. You don't argue because he's been doing this for 15 years, and you've been doing it for 15 days. You take the correction, and you don't make that mistake again. That's how you learn in this industry, through public humiliation and pattern recognition. You watch the welders work when they come up. They strip off their dry suits and their faces are red from exertion and heat. They don't talk much. They eat, they sleep, they go back down. You study them the way you used to study people you wanted to become. You ask questions when they're in the right mood. Most of the time, they're not in the right mood. Sometimes one of them will show you something: how to rig a burning bar, how to read a weld spec, how to pack a stinger with rod. These moments are rare and you remember every single one. The certification process is what separates you from actually diving. You need your commercial diving ticket first. That means dive school. 6 months of training that costs $15,000 you don't have. You save every paycheck. You skip the bar when the crew goes out in port. You eat the cheapest food on the catering menu. You are building a pile of money that represents a future you can see clearly now. Underwater welder. The words have weight. They mean something in the oil and gas world. They mean you're not just some deckhand. They mean you have a skill that only a few thousand people on the planet possess. One night you're on deck at 2 a.m. during a shift change. The water is black and calm. The rig lights reflect off the surface like a city floating in nothing. The diver below is cutting steel, and you can see the arc flash underwater, a green glow pulsing in the dark. You're holding his umbilical and monitoring his gas supply, and for the first time since you started, you feel like you understand what you're doing. Not perfectly, but enough. The dive supervisor walks past and glances at your logbook. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't need to. You're doing it right. That silence is the closest thing to praise you'll get out here. But knowing how to tend doesn't make you a diver. And being a diver doesn't make you a welder. Those are two completely different mountains to climb. You've only just started. Level 2. The student. Dive school is a concrete pool in Louisiana that smells like chlorine and diesel. 6 days a week for 6 months. You and 23 other students learning to breathe underwater while someone controls your air from the surface. The first time they flood your helmet during a training exercise, your brain screams at you to rip it off. You don't. You signal the problem. You wait for the supervisor to adjust your gas. You manage the flood exactly how they taught you. Your hands are shaking when you surface, but you pass the drill. 3 students quit in the first month. The work is harder than they expected. Not the diving, the studying. Gas laws, dive tables, decompression theory, hyperbaric medicine. You're learning physics and physiology and emergency medicine simultaneously, while also learning to work in an environment that will kill you if you panic. You study every night until your eyes burn. You run calculations over and over. Partial pressures, bottom times, ascent rates. One mistake in the real world means someone dies. Maybe you. Maybe the diver you're tending. The math has to be automatic. Welding class starts in month 3. You're in a shallow tank with a stinger in your hand, trying to run a bead on a steel plate. Underwater welding is nothing like surface welding. You can't see the puddle clearly. The arc behaves differently under pressure. Hydrogen bubbles up through the weld and creates porosity if you're not careful. Your first attempt looks like someone melted a crayon on the plate. Your instructor doesn't laugh. He just marks it failed and tells you to try again. You try 40 times before you produce something that passes inspection. The other students are struggling too. One guy was a certified welder topside for 8 years. Underwater, he's starting over like everyone else. That levels the field in a way you didn't expect. Nobody's experience matters down here. Only what you can do right now with limited visibility and cold water pulling heat from your body. You learn to weld in every position. Flat, horizontal, vertical up, vertical down, overhead. Each position is a separate skill that your hands have to memorize. You practice until the movements are automatic. Strike the arc. Maintain the gap. Feed the rod. Watch the puddle. Control the heat. By month 5, you're running structural welds that pass X-ray inspection. Not every time, but enough that your instructor starts nodding instead of just shaking his head. The final month is all scenario training, equipment failures, emergency ascents, entanglement, lost gas supply, blowouts. They throw every possible disaster at you in controlled conditions so that when it happens for real, your body knows what to do before your brain catches up. You graduate in December, 20 students out of the original 24. You have your commercial diving certification and your underwater welding ticket. You're qualified for exactly nothing until someone hires you. You return to the Gulf with new credentials and the same problem. Nobody wants a newly certified diver with 0 offshore hours. You spend 2 months applying to every diving company operating in the region. You get 3 interviews, no offers. Then a contractor in the North Sea calls. They need bodies for a pipeline repair job. 6-week rotation. The pay is half what experienced divers make, but you don't negotiate. You take it. You fly to Aberdeen in February. The North Sea in winter is a different kind of hostile. Water temperature near freezing. Waves that slam the dive support vessel like a toy. Visibility so bad you navigate by touch more than sight. Your first real dive is at 80 feet on a gas pipeline. You're down there to grind welds that failed inspection. The current is strong enough that you have to clip off to the structure just to stay in position. You can hear your own breathing inside the helmet. Loud and steady and the only familiar thing in the dark, the grinding wheel throws sparks that disappear instantly in the black water. You work slowly, methodically, exactly how they taught you. When you surface an hour later, the dive supervisor reviews your work on the underwater camera footage. He doesn't say good job. He says you're diving again tomorrow. That means you didn't screw up. You complete the 6-week rotation without incident. No injuries, no failed welds, no panic attacks at depth. The company asks if you want another rotation. You say yes before they finish the question. You're not making great money yet, but you're making diver money, and you're building hours in your logbook. Every dive is a line item that makes you more valuable. Every successful job is proof you can do this work. You're 24 years old and you're welding steel in the North Sea in the middle of winter. Your body aches in places you didn't know existed. But you're doing it. You're actually doing it. The next level up isn't about certification. It's about reputation. and reputation is built one dive at a time in conditions that don't forgive mistakes. Level 7. The Saturation Diver. You've logged 3,000 hours underwater across 4 years. You've worked the Gulf, the North Sea, offshore Brazil, and West Africa. Your logbook reads like a passport stamped by every hostile body of water on Earth. Companies know your name now. When they need someone reliable at depth, your phone rings. The call comes from a deepwater operator in the Gulf. They're running a saturation diving operation at 400 feet. They need welders who can handle the pressure, literally and otherwise. Saturation diving is a different universe. You don't go down and come up the same day. You live in a pressurized chamber on the deck of a support vessel for weeks at a time. Your body saturates with inert gas at depth pressure. You stay saturated for the entire rotation. One decompression at the end instead of multiple decompressions per day. You and 5 other divers live in a steel tube the size of a small RV. Bunks stacked 3 high. A toilet behind a curtain. Meals passed through a medical lock. The atmosphere inside is maintained at the equivalent pressure of your working depth. You breathe heliox, a helium-oxygen mix that makes everyone sound like cartoon characters. Conversations are absurd, and nobody laughs because this is just how you communicate now. Every day, you and your partner climb into a diving bell. The bell is a pressurized capsule lowered on a cable to the work site. You exit the bell through a hatch in the bottom. You're now swimming in open water 400 feet below the surface in total darkness except for your helmet lights. The cold is absolute. Water temperature at this depth sits just above freezing year-round. Your hot water suit pumps heated water through tubing against your skin. When the system works, you stay warm. When it fails, you have maybe 10 minutes before hypothermia starts shutting you down. You weld subsea infrastructure that holds the offshore energy grid together. Pipeline tie-ins, manifold connections, riser repairs. These welds have to be perfect because failure means environmental catastrophe and loss of life. The pressure is immense in every sense. You're working in an environment that will kill you in minutes if your equipment fails. The structures you're joining carry oil and gas under thousands of pounds of pressure. One bad weld can rupture months later and cause a blowout. Your hands execute welds you can barely see through the murky water and the glare of the arc. You're working by feel as much as sight. The rod feeds. The puddle flows. You tie in a 6-inch pipe at 400 feet in near-zero visibility, while breathing a gas mix that makes you lightheaded if you think about it too long. You surface after a 6-hour shift. Surface means back inside the bell. The bell gets winched up and mated to the chamber. You climb back into your tube and eat a meal that tastes like cardboard because everything tastes wrong under pressure. You sleep in a bunk with your crewmates snoring 3 feet away. The chamber hums constantly. Compressors running, ventilation circulating. You don't really sleep. You exist in a state between awake and unconscious for 28 days straight. Decompression takes 5 days. You sit in the chamber while they slowly reduce the pressure. Your body off-gasses nitrogen and helium at a rate that won't kill you. Too fast and you get bent. Nitrogen bubbles form in your blood and tissues. Paralysis. Stroke. Death. Decompression sickness is not theoretical. You've seen divers come out of the chamber unable to walk. When you finally step out of the chamber after a month, your legs don't work right. Your sense of balance is gone. You smell things you haven't smelled in weeks. Fresh air, diesel fuel, salt spray. The sun is unbearably bright. You spend 3 days in a hotel room recovering before you fly home. Your girlfriend says you're different when you come back from SAT jobs. Distant, slow to respond, like part of you is still down there in the dark. The money is significant now. A saturation diver on a deepwater rotation can clear $200,000 a year. Some make more. But the work is extractive. It takes pieces of you that don't grow back. Your joints ache from the pressure cycles. Your hearing is deteriorating from years of helium exposure. You know divers in their 40s who can't pass the physical anymore. Their bodies are done. You're 32. You've been underwater for nearly a decade. You've made more money than anyone in your family ever imagined. You've also spent more time in compression chambers than most people spend in their cars. You think about the next level sometimes. Dive supervisor, SAT coordinator, A job on the surface managing operations instead of executing them. But that feels like giving up. Like admitting your body can't do this anymore. So you take the next call. Another rotation. Another month locked in a tube breathing heliox at depth. Because this is what you do, and you're not ready to stop. Level 10, the surface. You're 41 years old and you can't dive anymore. The company doctor failed you on your physical. Your lungs show scarring from years of breathing mixed gas under pressure. Your joints are deteriorating faster than they should. The medical certificate that lets you work underwater is gone, and it's not coming back. You have money saved. More than most people see in a lifetime. But you also have a specific set of skills that only work in one environment, and that environment is now off limits. You take a supervisor position with the same company. You're running dive operations from the surface now. You coordinate teams. You review dive plans. You watch younger divers do the work you used to do. Some of them are good. Some of them are reckless. You see yourself in both types. The transition is harder than you expected. You spent 15 years solving problems with your hands underwater. Now you solve them with paperwork and conference calls. You sit in an office on the dive support vessel while your crew is at depth. You monitor their vitals on a screen. You listen to their breathing through a headset. You remember what that sounds like from the inside. A diver gets into trouble on a job in West Africa. Umbilical entanglement at 300 feet. You talk him through the problem from the surface. Your voice is calm because panic travels through communication systems faster than instructions. He clears the entanglement and completes the dive. When he surfaces, he thanks you. You tell him he did the work. But you both know that's not entirely true. You're good at this job. You understand the work better than supervisors who never dove. You know what the diver is experiencing at depth because you lived it for years. That knowledge makes you valuable in a different way now. But you miss it. You miss the weight of the helmet, the sound of your own breathing, the absolute focus required to weld steel in the dark while the ocean tries to kill you. You miss the simplicity of a problem that can be solved with a torch and a steady hand. You drive past the dock some mornings before your shift. The boats are loading equipment. Divers are gearing up. You watch them for a few minutes before heading to your office. You don't regret the years you spent underwater. You just wish your body had held out longer. Your son is 19. He's working on a construction crew and hating it. He asks you about diving. You tell him the truth. The money is real. The work is hard. It will break your body faster than you think possible. You'll miss weddings and births and every normal moment people take for granted. You'll spend weeks at a time in places that don't feel like Earth. You'll do things most people can't imagine and nobody will understand what you're talking about when you try to explain. He asks if you'd do it again. You don't hesitate. Yes? Every time. Somewhere right now someone is standing on a dock at dawn. They're about to step onto a boat that will take them offshore for the first time. They're wearing new work boots and carrying a bag packed by someone who doesn't understand why they're doing this. They're terrified and excited in equal measure. They have no idea what they're walking into. They'll figure it out. They always do.